Hey everybody, it's Magic Prepper, and I'm out here shooting guns, wearing gas masks, and just trying to be as prepared as possible for whatever might come in the future. Some of you might ask, why would you waste your time wearing a gas mask and shooting guns when you should be gardening, right? There's always this argument of prioritization based on everybody's individual circumstances that comes up. Well, first off, I'm just testing out gear and I just want to see how it will work and what capabilities it will offer and will eliminate if that time ever comes where it's necessary, right? So these are things I'm trying out. I also live in a nuclear rich environment. When I say that, I live in Minuteman missile silo territory, right? So I have to consider these possibilities of being involved with radiation at some point in time, or at least some type of other threat. So I'm just testing stuff out. I'm not trying to prioritize it over food or anything else that's more productive or more reasonable, I guess, right? But here's the thing. A lot of you are just like me. And when I say that, I don't mean, at the same place in our preparedness or having the same profession, right? Because this is a weird niche I found myself in. But what I'm trying to say is I don't have a law enforcement background. I don't have a military background. I don't have any professional training at that level when it comes to dealing with a wartime scenario, right? Dealing with a CBRN threat, dealing with situations that involve shooting back. I don't have any of that training or any of that professional experience. Now, a lot of you do. There's a lot of great people in this community that have served in the military or current law enforcement or are currently serving. Whatever it is, there's a lot of you with some great information and experience that you often share here, which I appreciate. But I assume the majority of the preparedness community is like me. No experience in that department at all. And although it does take a lot of resources when it comes to prepping, right? It's not super difficult to buy a bunch of extra food. It's not super difficult to store it away properly, right? Put it in some Mylar bags, throw in some oxygen absorbers, seal it up, put it in a bucket to keep the pests out, and call it a day. It's pretty straightforward, right? And although it's very important, and it should be a priority, especially for those of you who have zero capacity of producing food, which I don't think is a reasonable expectation to place on every single person, right? It's just not something everyone can do. But if you could at least put that food away, you're in a really good spot. But it doesn't take a lot of practice. It doesn't take a lot of training. It doesn't take a lot of skill to buy extra food and put it away. The same goes with water. The hardest part about storing water is space and affordability. I can't afford the size of tank I would need to have enough water to drink forever, right? That's just out of the question. But I can probably store some water in some of the space that I have and have some water on hand. What level of skill or proficiency does that require? Well, it requires being able to afford it, having the space, and being able to put water into the container and then researching how to treat that water so it doesn't go bad. And I have videos on that. I also have videos on food storage involving Mylar bags, oxygen absorbers, and putting them in buckets, right? Those are all very rudimentary things that are very, very important to your preparedness. And you should be prioritizing that if you don't have it put together yet. But I don't have the skills nor am I near the level of those who have been professionally trained to do things like wear a gas mask and shoot a rifle. I don't have the skills or the professional training to be at the level of those who professionally give medical aid to people as well, right? Which is another priority, which is honestly more important than shooting guns with gas masks. Learning more about medical and first aid will be a more likely skill to use in the future, regardless of what happens, because a car accident can happen and you might need to apply first aid. That's way more likely than ever having to deal with a bullet traveling in your direction. But those are skills you have to get out and practice and proficiently work at. And I don't have someone at my home that can regularly teach me additional first aid. I have to leave my property and go take classes and take courses and acquire medical equipment in order to achieve those goals, which is totally fine. That's most people's situation. But I do have the property and access to get outside and shoot guns while wearing gas masks. And that's why I do it a lot. Are there other things I'm working on the property in the meantime? 100%. But I'm like most of you. I know I'm assuming a lot when I say that, but I think the majority of people are in the same boat where I don't have any of that training that was paid for by someone else in the sense of the government, right? Or the municipality or whatever it is. And the only way I can get better at it is by doing it. And then, of course, just like first aid, taking courses, taking classes, and doing more training. But I can work on these things here by myself. Not as well and not as proficiently as if I had somebody here to help me and teach me. But it is something I can do. Same with first aid. It's just understanding that if you and me are on the same page and we lack that experience, it's not very hard to store away food. It's not very hard to store away water. It's not very hard to purchase a generator and make sure it has enough capacity for what you want to use it for, right? It's not super hard to store fuel. Most of those things, biggest barrier to entry is affordability, right? But when it comes to putting lead downrange and using niche specialized equipment that you might never actually need, but the one time you do, you're going to need it really, really bad. Well, that's stuff that you have to actually work on and train on and try to make work. Because if you don't, you'll never know how to do it if that time ever comes where you actually need it. And that's why I do a lot of this stuff. I just wanted to address that because I was out here shooting today. I'm getting some zeros done. You know, I got another optic on a handgun that I had to zero, and I have to verify the zero on this optic because I've got a new flow-through suppressor now, which I am testing out and currently thoroughly enjoying. But while I was out here, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, man, I need to get back to working on the garden. I need to start preparing everything to plant 100 plum trees, which are coming here soon. You know, I got to get back on my solar situation in order to make sure that it's expanding. But in the meantime, I also am doing this. So I don't want anything I do on the channel to confuse anybody or to, I guess, dictate a level of priority. Like we've talked about a lot of these things. It's not something I've ignored. It's just something that the repeatability of isn't necessarily always there. But I have full faith that every single one of you can understand the process of buying extra food and storing away extra food, and buying extra water and storing away extra water, and buying extra batteries and storing away extra batteries, so on and so forth, which we'll still talk about on this channel, don't get me wrong. But you are limited to your skill level in other aspects of preparedness, whether or not that's gardening, medical aid, firearms training, using niche equipment like gas masks or night vision, whatever else it is, you're limited by how much you practice and by how much you train. And with the way the world's going and the threats that we're currently facing and the fact that we're imploding from the inside in ways that are not organic and spurred on by foreign adversaries, well, the idea of needing some of this equipment to maintain some level of peace and prosperity, which is what we're all hoping for, right, becomes a lot more reasonable. So that's why I'm doing a lot of it. Okay. And the whole goal of this channel was like to share my preparedness journey with you. And this is like kind of just where I'm at on my preparedness, right? I have a lot of food. I really do. Now my next step is producing food. But that's a lot of steps and takes a lot of process. And yeah, gardening's not super difficult. It does take practice. You have to do it time and time again to figure out why you keep screwing it up. But it's also, well, to be honest with you, inherently boring. Just my thoughts on it. I think it's important, but boring. Oh, well, that's just how it is. I think sanitation's important. Also boring. Unless you really want to find out exactly what I'm going to do with all of my human waste post-shtf, which, I mean, we might have to talk about it, but I think we all kind of know how that works. So, I don't know. I just wanted to have this conversation. Like I said, I feel like most of you are like me. We get the basic principles and we can easily achieve those goals as long as the affordability is in place. But I can't buy my way to being a better shooter. I can't buy my way to experience of using a gas mask and how that will hinder me in a stressful scenario. I can't buy my way to being better at giving first aid, stopping the bleed, right? So I have to practice and I have to train, and that's all I can do. And that's why I do a lot of this stuff. And just so you guys are aware, I mean, obviously, I often say Midway USA is the biggest supporter of the channel. I don't mean that in the sense of the support that you all give me, right? Obviously, you guys are the biggest supporter of the channel in the sense of you watching the channel and providing me with these opportunities. All of you watching right now are the biggest supporters of the channel. When I reference that to Midway USA, it's me saying they're the biggest financial supporter of the channel. They provide me with the resources and the equipment necessary to test out new things and show off new equipment to the rest of the community that I might not otherwise have access to. And some of this stuff is hard to acquire. So it is very beneficial to be working with Midway USA, and I really appreciate their partnership. And honestly, it's been a very good relationship. But I don't want anyone to ever misconstrue what I'm saying when I say they're the biggest supporter of the channel. Obviously, I wouldn't be anywhere where I'm at today without all of you, clearly. But from a financial standpoint, they really do make sure that this channel keeps moving forward. Which, you know, if that gives you reason to be a customer of theirs, then that's awesome. And I appreciate that support from a middleman type of scenario, right? But at the same time, I mean, at least it's not Raid Shadow Legends, right? So, look, I probably rambled on long enough, but if you're like me, you don't have any of that experience, but you get all the basic stuff, and now you're just trying to figure out how to deal with things like this or medical or comms or anything like that, then let me know in the comments below. That way we know we're all not like alone and that it's not just us being fringe weirdos all the time. And if you feel like this stuff might become more relevant as time goes on because of the current state of things around the world and here in our country, then you can let me know about that too, because that's just where my mind's been at. And I've got a family to protect and provide for. And if I can't secure the preps that we have worked so hard to acquire and put away, then they might as well not even exist, because we know how quickly society will unravel as soon as they start to go hungry. And especially for me, I don't know about you all, but like I have willingly and publicly given away all my OPSEC, right? Which is fine because I think it's valuable in the sense of being able to help anybody who I've helped throughout the years. But at the same time, knowing that and being aware of that means I have to be a little bit more focused on security, let's just say. So anything else you all need from me, you know what to do. Go to magicprepper.com. And besides that, that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.